Why did NFL insiders only report that one team reached out to Shedeur Sanders on draft day, when, behind the scenes, there were actually 3? And not just any teams. We're talking about the Ravens, the Browns, and the Eagles. But only one of those conversations, with the Ravens, was actually leaked to the public. And that leak was perfectly timed, just before the Browns played the Ravens on national TV. Think that's a coincidence? Cam Newton hinted at it. Deion Sanders just confirmed it. And suddenly, everything starts to fall into place. Now ask yourself this: why would the NFL, or anyone tied to it, want to keep certain calls off the record? Why weaponize partial truths about a young quarterback before he even gets a legit shot? Because Shedeur Sanders doesn't fit the mold. He's financially stable. He has his own branding power. And he's playing the game on his own terms, instead of sitting quietly in line. That makes him dangerous, not to players, but to the system. You're about to see how the NFL media machine twists facts, delays the truth, and paints Shedeur as the problem, when behind the scenes, it's the opposite. And by the time this video ends, you won't wonder if something deeper is going on. You'll start asking why no one wants to talk about it. On draft day, headlines only mentioned one thing: that Shedeur Sanders turned down a chance with the Baltimore Ravens. That detail spread fast, plastered across every sports page. Insider blog and NFL podcast within hours. But here's what they didn't tell you. It wasn't just the Ravens. Behind closed doors, 2 more teams reached out to Shedeur: the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cleveland Browns. 3 NFL franchises, all reportedly showing interest in the 5th round, all making contact. That part? Silent. Swept under the rug. The only team the public heard about was Baltimore. And oddly enough, that leak was timed days before the Browns were set to face the Ravens. In a recent interview, Deion casually dropped a bomb that confirmed what fans, independent commentators, and even Cam Newton had already been whispering. Not only did the Ravens call on draft day, but the Eagles and the Browns reached out as well. Shedeur Sanders had been in talks with 3 different NFL teams. They just didn't report it. Deion's exact words? They made a big deal out of Philly calling us on draft day. They didn't mention that. I just let a cat out the bag. Think about that for a second. He wasn't ranting. He wasn't speculating. He slipped it in as if it was no big deal. But that one line upended the entire storyline. Because suddenly, what NFL insiders had omitted became far more important than what they chose to reveal. And remember, this wasn't some Instagram rumor or faceless report. This came from Deion Sanders, not just Shedeur's father, but one of the most respected voices in football today. And once you understand why Shedeur turned these teams down, you'll see it had nothing to do with ego and everything to do with the one thing NFL fans often forget: strategy. After the NFL media subtly blasted Shedeur Sanders for turning down the Ravens, the internet lit up with accusations. He's arrogant. He thinks he's too good. He should have just been grateful. But here's what none of those critics mention. Shedeur had a strategy. Let's break it down. Imagine being a quarterback who started every game you've been eligible for, who's broken records, led comebacks, and built a fan base from scratch. Not because of your last name, but because of your play. Then imagine getting asked to voluntarily spend the next 5 to 10 years sitting behind Lamar Jackson, one of the most durable, highest-paid quarterbacks in the league. It makes 0 sense. In Deion's words, how in the world can somebody fault him for saying or thinking, "Why would I go back up Lamar for 10 more?" That's not entitlement, that's self-awareness. Shedeur never said he was above learning. He never claimed to be ready to start day one. But what he did say, clearly through his choices, is that he wants to be in a system where opportunity isn't just wishful thinking, it's realistic. Let's compare. The Ravens? You're not replacing Lamar unless he's injured long term. And even then, they've got a strong veteran pipeline. The Eagles? Jalen Hurts is locked in with one of the fattest QB contracts in the league, and they've got depth behind him. The Browns? There's instability. Deshaun Watson hasn't looked like himself. There's noise about performance issues, and they just spent a 5th-round pick on Shedeur. That means low investment, high upside. If you're Shedeur, where's the path to actually play? It's not shocking he picked Cleveland. But of course, none of that fits the narrative the media cooked up. Saying he turned down Baltimore sounds inflammatory. It sounds selfish. Saying he made a smart business decision based on depth charts and opportunity isn't sexy. It doesn't spark outrage clicks. So they spun it. Same facts, different optics. People forget the NFL isn't just football. It's contracts, fit, windows of opportunity. And Shedeur saw exactly where he'd have the chance to compete now, not in 10 years. Transition to Section 4. And here's the part that might shock you. The people defending Shedeur's decision aren't just fans. They're NFL legends who've lived it, seen it, and said he made the smartest move of his career so far. Let's talk about that. While the NFL's official media machine painted Shedeur as entitled or ungrateful, real legends, guys who actually played the game, saw right through the noise, and they didn't hold anything back. From Cam Newton to Eric Dickerson, Shady McCoy, Aqib Talib, and multiple former quarterbacks, the consensus was clear. Shedeur made the right decision. In fact, Eric Dickerson didn't mince words. He said what fans were thinking but were too afraid to say. The NFL doesn't want him. Not because he can't play, but because he won't play their game. Cam Newton echoed that, reminding everyone how often the league selectively praises or buries young quarterbacks based on optics, not ability. He openly sided with Shedeur, calling out the NFL for manipulating narratives and weaponizing media to control public perception. Even Deion Sanders himself hinted at this, saying that Shedeur has been portrayed as brash or difficult, when none of that reflects the reality inside the locker room or film room. Why does that matter? Because in the NFL, public opinion shifts careers. A few viral clips or a single quote twisted out of context can turn a rising star into a villain. And unless that player has people vouching for them, people NFL fans listen to, that character shift sticks. But Shedeur? He has veterans backing him. Super Bowl champions, Hall of Famers. And not just because they like him, because they see the same thing on tape that his stats prove. He's NFL material. He's not just a QB with charisma. He's patient in the pocket, accurate under pressure, and mentally ahead of where most rookies land. So, when ordinary commentators online said he's dodging competition, real players stepped in and said, no, he's choosing the right fight. And they would know. These are guys who endured toxic systems, injury mismanagement, and years wasted on benches behind star QBs they could have outperformed if given the chance. They know what Shedeur's looking at, and they respect the decision to bet on himself instead of waiting quietly in line. But if all these greats are backing him, why does it still feel like the NFL media is against him? The answer lies in timing and the calculated way the league leaks information when it benefits them the most. Let's pull back the... By now, it's obvious this isn't just about Shedeur Sanders turning down a team or two. It's about how the story was told and when. Let's talk about the timing and why so many fans, players, and creators are starting to question everything. The Shedeur Sanders turns down Ravens story didn't come out on draft day. It didn't come out after the draft. It didn't even surface during the preseason when storylines were thin and people were hungry for content. No. That report dropped exactly 1 week before the Browns played the Ravens. You don't need to wear a tinfoil hat to see the agenda. This was a media play, not a football update. Why drop it then? Why wait months to leak something that supposedly happened in April, only to use it during a major matchup involving Shedeur's new team? Clicks, views, engagement, manipulation. They also omitted critical details. The Eagles and Browns both called Shedeur during the draft process, yet those conversations were never mentioned. Imagine how different the public conversation would have sounded if the report said, Shedeur Sanders spoke to the Ravens, Eagles, and Browns, and chose Cleveland for the clearest path to the field. Sounds smart, right? Doesn't make you roll your eyes. Doesn't paint him as arrogant. It's reasonable. But saying he turned down the Ravens with zero context makes it sound like he said no to a future Hall of Famer out of ego. Like he thinks he's too good for Baltimore. And that false narrative spreads instantly. Because when you only give the part of the truth that fuels outrage, you get what the NFL's media ecosystem thrives on: viral discourse. But Shedeur isn't just in a weird media storm. He's being used. He's become a tool in a larger strategy that the NFL has used for years. Build up or tear down individual players, depending on what serves the league, the matchups, and TV ratings. If that sounds extreme, ask yourself, why would a major insider with access to all 32 teams forget to mention Philly or Cleveland? You really think that level of information just slipped past them? Not a chance. But the truth is, this kind of manipulation isn't new. It's just becoming easier to see. And once you understand the power struggle between rising player brands and the NFL's control tactics, it all starts to make sense. This isn't just about Shedeur Sanders anymore. It's about something bigger, something every rising NFL player is starting to feel. The NFL has always been about the league first, players second. Branding, marketing, television deals, they revolve around teams and logos, not individual names. The Shield. But what happens when a college kid enters the league already valued higher than the jersey he's wearing? That's exactly what's happening with Shedeur. Before throwing a single NFL snap, he was already top 5 in jersey sales. He had more name recognition than half the quarterbacks in the league, and he built that reputation without the NFL machine. Through NIL, name, image, and likeness deals, social media content, fan loyalty, and his father's presence, Shedeur entered the draft with what the league fears most: influence. Influence outside of their system. Fame that wasn't filtered through NFL films or network specials. A player brand that didn't need the league's help to grow. That breaks the model. Because the NFL's entire marketing model rests on this question: if every player disappeared, would fans still watch for the team? So far, the answer has been yes. But in recent years, players have started becoming bigger than their organizations. We've already seen it with guys like Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Their names became identity brands. Now, here comes Shedeur, a rookie, already commanding that kind of attention. And unlike others, he didn't have to win a Super Bowl to get it. He had it before he even signed the rookie contract. That's dangerous. Not to the fans, not to the game, but to the people running the business behind the game. Because when a player becomes too powerful, too popular, or too independent, they're harder to control. They push back. They make their own decisions. They don't fall in line. And suddenly, media spin and subtle criticisms start to kick in. The narrative shifts from rising star to cocky diva, even if that player hasn't changed anything. And Shedeur? According to his teammates, coaches, and NFL legends, he's done everything right. He trains, he listens, he makes smart business moves. But he won't let the machine dictate his career path. And rubs the league the wrong way. So what does the NFL do when a player won't play by their rules? Simple. They shape the story around him. And they do it by controlling what you see and what you don't. If you want to control a player's narrative, you don't need to lie. You just need to leave certain things out. That's exactly what we've seen with Shedeur Sanders. The NFL, or at least the media arms attached to it, withheld key information on draft day and released it strategically when it suited their content schedule. Not the truth. Let's be clear. Shedeur didn't just talk to the Ravens. He also had conversations with the Eagles and the Browns. But only the Ravens conversation was reported. And it wasn't even during draft coverage. It was months later, dropped casually the week the Browns played the Ravens. And that's not a coincidence. That's timing with intention. Ask yourself, if you're Adam Schefter, with access to every GM, scout, and insider in the league, how do you forget to mention two entire franchises? Especially when one of them is the team that drafted him. You don't forget. You choose not to mention it. And when only one call is revealed, the one that makes Shedeur look cocky or ungrateful, the audience runs with it. Fans start saying things like, "He turned down the Ravens? Who does this kid think he is? He's a fifth-round pick." So, instead, the insiders sit on the full story, waiting for the right matchup or media cycle to drip-feed the version that gets the most clicks. And let's be real, timing is too perfect to ignore. Dropping the Ravens leak during a divisional game week? That's not journalism. That's a content drop. It's the NFL media machine building drama, creating conflict, and turning real people into characters in a weekly storyline. Shedeur didn't write this script, but he's been cast as the bad guy anyway. And now that the story's out and the narrative is built, the NFL's counting on you to forget the facts. But here's the twist. They're not just misrepresenting Shedeur, they're also misjudging the audience. So what have we really learned? That Shedeur Sanders had options on draft day. That he made a conscious, strategic decision based on football opportunity, not ego. That major NFL insiders like Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport chose to share only a slice of that truth. And that slice, conveniently timed to stir controversy, fuel outrage, and shape perception. This isn't about whether you love or hate Shedeur Sanders. It's about recognizing the pattern, one we've seen happen to plenty of young, confident players before him. First, they build you up. New star, promising talent, exciting rookie. Then, if you don't fall perfectly in line, if your decisions don't serve the system's narrative, the spin begins. Suddenly, you're not smart. You're arrogant, not confident, entitled, not strategic, spoiled. But real ones are seeing through it. NFL legends are backing Shedeur. Veteran players are praising his decision-making. And fans who take the time to look past the headlines are realizing maybe this isn't about Shedeur being selfish. Maybe it's about the media losing control over the narrative. For decades, players needed the NFL to become stars. Now, stars are being built before they even enter the league. And Shedeur is living P. He had fans, a platform, NIL money, and influence before he even got his jersey number. And that's what this is really about. Because once the league sees that you don't need them as much as they need you, they don't celebrate it. They correct it. They try to humble you, control the conversation, paint a story that pulls you back into your place. But here's the catch. It's not working like it used to. Because now, fans have more access, more context, more voices. They're connecting the dots. And they no longer believe every headline at face value. So if you've made it to this point in the video, here's the challenge to you. Don't just go with the narrative you were handed. Question the timing, look at the framing, and ask yourself, who benefits from painting Shedeur as the villain? Because if a fifth-round rookie has this much attention, power, and audience, Maybe it's not about his play at all. Maybe it's because the NFL is afraid of what he represents. A future they can't fully control. If this gave you a new perspective, drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear the full side of the story, and subscribe for more real football conversations that cut through the noise.